Good evening. This is Ubuntu channel, and my name is Chaza right here. This evening, we do bring you a special interview right here. And tonight, we needed to have, lifestyle, but, the program is not coming due to some difficulties. And in place of it, we do have, this special interview. And on special interview, I'll be actually talking to Professor Martin Bell Chipakata right here. And we'll be looking at good governance. And to help me get to execute, this interview, I do have, my co-host, Jeremy Ruben right here. Jeremy, good evening and welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, Chaza. Good evening. It's a lovely evening here in Lusaka. I don't know if you're in Lusaka or you're in Dola now, but it's a lovely evening here in Lusaka.
Okay, how is the weather? I understand that Lusaka is pretty cold right now. How is it like, this time around?
It's pretty cold, especially in the night, but during the day it's warm. But it's a good weather. Not bad. It's not raining since is it March? Yeah, we did have rains in April. No rains in May so far.
And we've had rains on the Copper Belt almost, up to the mid of April. And it's been about, few weeks after we had last rains. Right now, it's seemingly having a similar, weather pattern with Lusaka.
Indeed. And last week I traveled to the Western Province. It's quite similar also. No rains there since somewhere early April, but no rains up to now. You could see even the Zambezi River is not. It's not the Zambezi River that we know. The swamps are dry. I now understand the reason why the Komboka ceremony was cancelled.
Yeah, which is not a good thing. We are actually directly, experiencing the effects of, climate change. And we need to change our behaviors for us to actually, get to recuperate, the good weather that we need as it were.
And Chaza, we have our guest now.
Yeah, pretty and a nice thing there, Professor Martin Bell Chipakata. Professor, good evening and welcome to the program.
Good evening, my goodness. How are you, brothers?
Doing pretty fine. How are you doing?
We are doing very fine in Lusaka. I should believe you are fine also in Copper Belt.
Yes, we are fine, and the Copper Belt, Ndola specifically, is a friendly town, so we are experiencing some friendliness around here.
Wonderful. You must be enjoying than we that are in Lusaka.
They say what is so disturbing in Lusaka is the congestion of both people and motor vehicles.
Oh my God. It's congested. I tell you, to start working on this one.
Exactly. Professor, it's a pleasure to actually have you right on the program. And tonight we'll be looking at good governance. And as you get to the program, we do understand that you are a scholar of global good governance. So we are actually, geared getting to learn from you what good governance is, the tenets of good governance, and so on and so forth. But right now, we'd like to find out from you, Professor, who is Professor Martin Bell Chipakata? Want to know in terms of, your family background, your social aspect, your education aspect, and of course, the professional aspect, especially that you are professor.
Quite humbling. Thank you very much. Professor St. Martin Bell is a Zambian national, a family man who I've attended my academic, both primary, secondary, and tertiary education in Zambia. And then I did my degree with a London-based college. And then I have been studying with the University of Zambia to prepare myself for defense with the Northern Washington University for my PhD. And that I have worked in the government of the Republic of Zambia for some time now. But in all my life, I've been researching and reading to find out what African communities must learn. For information, I tried to divert myself and became a little bit controversial by taking to study one of the most esoteric field of study. Imagine I went back to study the lolologies with the purpose of trying to, I noticed there were a lot of lacunas in our education system that were causing us lag behind in terms of education, quality education, as viewed by our performances. And so I approached to study theosophies, metaphysics, and I found that by doing my comparative studies, I came up with a thought. I'm now coining in a thesis to defense for global good governance. An interesting part of it, I have majored more on trying to make African governance system more viable than ever before, having learned from how colleagues in America, or colleagues in Europe, or colleagues in China, and our colleagues in India are making it. And then I am trying to wake ourselves, especially we Africans, from this slumber and the inertia that has held us backward all this while. That's simply about a humble self, Professor Martin Belchberg.
Yeah, that's really insightful. And except that I have not heard anything in terms of, the family aspect. Kindly tell us about, your family, Professor.
I'm a family man. As you know, in Africa, you're not a man, not a family, eh? You're only proven man enough if at least you can showcase and prove to Solomon that he was not the only one who went to marry when Adam failed in the Garden of Eden. I'm a family. Blessed of girls and boys, children, all that I'm taking to school to be scientists, mathematicians, accountants, and that I have enjoyed the family approach of African setup, especially where you are teaching your children not to be held up in doldrums of primitivity that has held Africa backward all this while. Thank you, sir.
All right, Professor, thank you so much. We do appreciate. We just have, a snippet. You've actually seemingly, dodged to give us, an in-depth in terms of the family aspect, but just a hint. It is actually, something worth noting that you do have, a family, as indicated, as it were. Thank you so much. At this point in time, would like to delve now into the topic that we do have. The topic or issue of the day is good governance. What exactly is good governance, Professor? What are the tenets? What is it that we should look for to identify that this is good governance?
Good governance, that's a very good question, Mr. Chaza and the panel out there. Good governance is something that sometimes I find to have been abused in our academia and a practical aspect of ourselves maybe our conduct have not come to learn exactly what good governance is. Very to say that good governance is a process. It's a process that we use to measure, or people in history, or governments, or people in institutions have used to measure how public institutions, can conduct themselves in a very fair manner and manage public affairs, resources effectively. And all this has to be done, with a guarantee, with a guarantee to the realization of human rights. Failure to have exhibited those qualities, good governance would have not been experienced. And this is the problem that we've faced for some time now, that people have failed to apply themselves. They that bear the tools of power, those that holds and sits in government institutions, having failed to understand the responsibility of he that sits in a chair of authority, how to exercise these ingredients of good governance. If an institution that is being herein established, being a government, for example, a government of Zambia, a government of Kenya, a government of South Africa, a government, they that sit therein as put by people do not guarantee the realization of human rights and the rule of law, and that they are devoid of, they can't measure their activities in dealing with the resources of the country, the requirements of the country, the needs of the people in the society. Then they would have injured. Never be good governance of the country to the other, from one angle of the country to the other. And in a situation where
Professor, are you getting me there? I'm having a tough time, getting you. I am under the impression that we have a connectivity challenge. Director, are you hearing me? If you do, I propose that we may break for a commercial and get to see what happens on the other side, so that we get a stable connectivity.
Globally, 85% of infertility is because of infections, typically the chlamydia and the gonorrhea.
Your time is up. Thank you so much.
Maybe, since I've been mentioned, I can react to what comment just
Yes.
I haven't finished my point.
Remember,
let me finish my point so that my brother can.
Does the Patriotic Front know the kind of
Welcome back. And before we went for
All right. Thank you very much. Prof, are you there? Can you hear me now?
You're loud now and clear.
All right. My colleague was asked you a question earlier on, and due to connectivity, we were not able to hear what you were saying. So wanted to understand really what are the tenets of governance, and you had started explaining, but unfortunately, we had lost you there. So maybe if you can just go back and you start explaining from there.
Okay, thank you very much, Brother Emmanuel. Yeah, I was trying to explain that tenets of good governance includes the process by which we measure the public institutions' conduct, public affairs, and how the management of the public resources are guaranteed in the country, and that they that are entrusted with responsibilities in the government to thus manage the affairs of the government will always adhere to the realization of the human rights of the states in which they are managing the affairs of government. In a situation where a government is run without adhering or realizing the importance of the human rights, how institutions conduct their affairs, and how the public is managed, how the society is governed, is organized, then the thing to talk about good governance is missing in such an environment. These, in many circumstances, where they've not been heed to, there have always been problems. Good governance has its own qualities to prove it's present in a country, in an economy, even on the continent or the planet. There are many, many tenets that have to be looked at. A lot of important tenets that should be looked at for a people to realize good governance. Mainly, before I come to that, you'll notice that in places where there has not been peace, in places where there has not been development, that's where we find gross, improper, bad government or governance. And this is always a result when people do not participate in the affairs of managing the government or the public activities, public affairs, and that the rule of law in such a community is completely not adhered to. Where transparency lacks in such an environment, usually the results are of bad governance. And in such environments, you'll find that accountability is not something valued. Everyone can do things anywhere he or she wants. After all, he is already in authority. You find there's nothing like involving others whenever decisions and policies are being formed. A consensus orientation required from the general public when making policies and decisions is not realized in a place where bad governance exists in place of good governance. And we have lamentably cried over time on the planet to try and find out how we can be responsive. We can be responsible people to make sure that good governance would always be there. We try to teach each other to promote equality. We try by all means that whenever we are making our decisions as leaders, be political leaders, community leaders, social leaders, religious leaders, we involve the general public. And the other thing that has completely corrupted the science of good governance is illiteracy. We haven't embarked too much holistically on the agenda of promoting education. If we created a bit of education around us, it is of poor quality. We have not explored enough. We have not.
Professor, I'll
yes,
cut you short a little bit, because I would like you to now, because what you're talking about is seemingly general. I'd like you now to come to Zambia specifically and speak to us on the Zambian context. Do we have this good governance and all these things you are talking about in terms of education, you know, the curriculum design, our policies, are they speaking to good governance? What is the status quo as we stand in terms of Zambia?
In Zambia, my dear colleagues, having done research all this while and having grown here.
Unfortunately, you know, both my co-host and also the guest have been, you know, removed due to connectivity, the high connectivity challenge. I'm hoping that they will be able to join us right here. Just in case you are just joining us this time around, we are looking at good governance, and we are hosting Professor Martin Bell Chipakata right here. And he's representing, you know, the scholars, because he's a scholar as regards global good governance. And good governance, according to him, is saying, you know, it's the kind of governance that is centered on the realization and also the protection or reverence of human rights. We are yet to find out from him, you know, especially on the Zambian context, you know, where are we in terms of good governance, looking at our policies, looking at, you know, everything that alludes, you know, to governance. Are we having good governance, or what is the status quo? What can we do for us to actually enhance, you know, good governance? Remember, this program is actually, you know, coined as a special interview because tonight we needed to actually, you know, have lifestyle, but lifestyle, you know, has not been brought to you due to some, you know, technical challenges here and there. But in place of that, we do have, you know, this special interview. And he has joined me back. Professor, we sincerely, you know, feel for you. Connectivity has been a problem. Just like in the background, we had chatted, you know, about it, that sometimes you may be thrown out due to connectivity. And even he who was laughing first, should be laughed last, because he laughed at me, for being thrown out. And right now he has also been thrown out, just on a light note. Welcome back,
I have
Professor.
noticed that. Thank you very much. Thank you, dear. Thank you.
Okay, I hope you heard my question before you were thrown out. If you never did, I can repeat the question.
Please, you can do that, please.
All right. So I was trying to find out from you because I heard you speaking in general terms as to what constitutes good governance, and you also went to talk about the education aspect as regards good governance, and I got moved, and I said, let us bring it home in terms of the Zambian situation. How are we faring in terms of good governance? The policies that we have, are they feeding into good governance? Where are we exactly?
Yeah, that is very important. Having mentioned preliminary aspects that institutes good governance, a word called democracy is a word that was started by our colleagues of the Greece professors like the Aristotles, the Platonics, and the Socrates. These guys, when they were trying to establish an approach of how they can manage the affairs of the general publics of their legions, they found out a lot of approaches to governance. In this case, their efforts narrowed them down to settle with democracy. But when they wanted to apply the tenets of democracy in totality, then they discovered a very big problem, that it is very difficult to run a democratic state with the citizens that are illiterate. And at that time, there were very few people that were very educated. And that's the reason why they had shelved democracy until the days of Abraham Lincoln was democracy held with high esteem in the Western culture. Come back to Africa, as you put it, my friend, that since we got independence, particularly like in Zambia, in 1964, I realized that we were given a partial independence in 1963. By then, our leaders that represented the country, Northern Rhodesia, until 1964, where we then given the full independence. The democracy that was practiced from that time up to today have been gradually improving, with the strides trying to arrive at a point when we can say now we are enjoying our democracy. As at hand, I believe when we were getting independence, we have very few, if at all, secondary schools, universities, colleges in the country. And that was a major problem for the people that were living there to justify our democracy then. And because of such, it was noticed that good governance was not an assurance. It was not guaranteed. But we kept on thriving, polishing ourselves, correcting ourselves. The leaders that then lived promoted free education. You remember Dr. Kaunda would allow us go in the University of Zambia at a through education scheme. We could go to primary schools without paying. Sometimes we were even given some books to promote education. For if you become knowledge, if you are educated, you don't remain a burden to the state. But when the majority of the citizen is uneducated, no wonder we say we need to promote education by first and foremost improving the qualities of working environment for the teachers, in as much as we have to build a lot of schools and provide their in desks, teaching materials, to make sure that the teachers that teaches the general publics are well equipped. They have accommodation, they're well educated from good meaning universities, and they have the desire and have the passion to educate their people, their nationals. And the nationals in the country are aged to take their children to school. In this country, which right now has 20 million plus population, under the reign of the seventh head of state, we're now in the regime of the seventh head of state in the crop of leadership that formed independency in our country. I think we have improved to reach this far, though I understand and I believe that the government is not doing much enough in as much as it is trying to do the best that it can.
Unfortunately, he has been, ejected once again. But, maybe this time around, as I get to welcome him, we'll request that probably he switches, off his video, and we can just have him in audio, because connectivity has proven to be, a problem. Okay, we sincerely apologize, but, we'll definitely get to continue with him. Remember, this is our Ubuntu channel, and tonight we are having a special interview, and we are looking at good governance right here. Ruben.
Yes, Chaza, talk to me.
You had also, been ejected. I think that was also connectivity.
Indeed. But I'm following the program, and it's an interesting topic, and Professor is really making us understand what governance is, Chaza.
Yeah, and I like the fact that he has, linked issues like education to good governance, that if the citizenry are not educated, then they cannot understand and appreciate whatever, the government is doing, or even criticize, because they may not even know what it is and know what they require. I think that was a very good connection. Professor, welcome back. It looks like he's still frozen.
Sure, we have serious problems with our network, but I'm sure we will.
Okay, Professor, I would request that maybe you may turn off your video. We just remain with your audio. Probably
exactly according to your question. Okay, if that is all right. If that is all right, then we can go. Okay. But now I can see you more clearly.
Okay, so when you look at the bottom of the screen, we have a sign of a microphone, and next to it a camera which is written cam. You can click on it so that we can turn off your video.
Okay, that is fine. Okay.
Okay, yes, so I must believe that this will definitely get to help. Let's take you back, as you were explaining on the Zambian context in terms of, good governance, and you connected it very well as regards education.
Yeah, thanks very much. I was trying to stress my point to indicate that where in Zambia we are trying the best that we can under the seventh regime of the crop of leadership that has formed independence in this country since 1964, as I said. If we had to emulate and copy what others are doing, we'll have to go by making sure we'll be improving every time.
Ruben,
every time we have to improve that. Yes, great.
Yeah, Professor, we had lost you, but we can get you now. You can continue. Unfortunately, he has been ejected again.
Indeed, Chaza. So you are talking of education. Indeed, it's important to have uh, uh, a nation which has got people who are illiterate, because they will also participate in terms of governance, Chaza. They will really contribute. Remember, he said that one of the tenets of good governance is that people should freely participate in terms of policy making. But how do you make policies with the people that are illiterate? So I like this point also on education. I've liked the way it linked them to good governance.
Exactly. And, having mentioned that, I would like to also find out from him, because he has talked about free education, as it were. And right now, as we stand, I think we have some policies in place where, there are grants that are being given, there are student loans, there are all sorts of incentives right now. Are they speaking to good governance? And also the fact that we have people that are smiling, including yourself, Jeremy, as you are entitled to withdrawing, partially from the pension contribution that you have made. The NAPSA issue.
The accounting from NAPSA, very important, Chaza.
Exactly.
I don't know, but if it's now, but we don't know, Chaza. Both of us, we don't know if that's part of good governance. If we're to get something from NAPSA, but we are here to learn. That's why Professor is here, just to help us understand on issues of governance.
I'm like back.
Exactly. Oh, Professor, welcome back. You are really a victim to bad connectivity tonight. Are you there, Professor?
I have just come back. We are battling the network problem.
Oh, yes. And just before you came back, myself and Jeremy, we were actually, looking at some things that we want to find out from you, if they speak to good governance. Some things like, bursaries that are in place, education loans that are in place, and not forgetting, some policies that, have come into play by amending, the NAPSA Act, and empowering, the workers to withdraw, from their contribution, that partial withdrawal, which has brought a lot of smiles around. Not forgetting that they increased the CDF, the student allowances. Unfortunately, he's gone. Ruben, we are in trouble tonight.
Yeah, indeed, Chaza. But also one thing that he mentioned, Chaza, was the issue of human rights. It says one of the tenets for good governance is that the government should observe human rights. And if you've seen one of in the comments coming from Laura, also wants to find out how do you blend in terms of the African culture and also the human rights in the Western world. If we're to get some of the things that they call human rights and bring them here, are we going to call it good governance, Chaza? So those are some of the things that we wanted to learn from the guest tonight.
Yeah, and it would be definitely a good thing to learn from a learned man, as it were, in this area, because what we do have are mere opinions, but it being coming from a learned person or a scholar, as it were, I think it carries more weight, because we have all these speculations and opinions. So definitely we need to be schooled on this one.
Indeed. And you just talked of a lot of things that are happening in terms of the education sector, where people are also accessing bursaries, and also issues of skills training under the CDF, whether they're part of good governance. A lot of things that are happening. But what I've noticed is that a lot of people still don't know that these things exist.
Mm-hmm. So what could be the problem as we stand today? Is it an issue of sensitization, education? And I remember right on this platform, we had brought, a government, person the director of communication, who was here, and we were trying to find out what's the problem. And he confessed that, yes, partly we have not done a lot of sensitization as policies are concerned. So is it an issue of sensitization and education, which is really a problem? This is why people don't know some of these things?
I should think so, Chaza. We have Professor back. Hope we won't lose you once again, Prof.
Yeah.
I'll try to pray. I will try to pray hard that no one knocks us out of the panel again. Thank you very much.
Okay, so Professor, before you were ejected once again, we had brought out some issues, and we wanted to know if they speak to good governance. I don't know if you heard me or you'd like me to repeat.
I got that one, and okay. It was a very good question that when I was about to explain, and then someone kicked me out. I believe now has been held up by the angels, not again kick us out. Surely, you know, in Zambia particularly, our government is trying the best that they can. It was impressive when I woke up the following day after having worked very hard a day before, to hear that all children that stopped learning from grade 3 should go back to school. All the pupils that stopped learning from grade 1 should go back to school. I was very impressed because I know one biggest problem that we have in Africa is illiteracy. And in the middle of these illiteracies, there is a government that comes into office and says, we can end this vice by taking everybody to school. If possible, everyone in the community. And that has happened. I believe, hope you're getting me, gentlemen.
Yes,
loud
indeed,
and clear.
Loud and clear.
So, yeah, there's an obstruction, but I can battle it out. Immediately when that happened, it gave a task to the teachers. And at the same time, while that was happening, as an initiative of the government in place today, the teachers were recruited up about for 30,400, as we may be aware, and I am aware that they are planning also to recruit others. When in the background there were others who were already recruited, who have not yet been put on the payroll, and now that they are being put on the payroll, I would urge our government to do more than just that. If they can spend more on investing in education, we are going to see results of good governance in the shortest period of time. While people are providing checks and balances with a critic motive, it is urged that they that provide the critics provide it with well-informed mind. We don't just provide critics to demean a thriving or a trying person. The economy of this country cannot be built by an individual. It will require a corrective effort, which will start with, just like Castro did it in Cuba. He educated children by using the grade 5s to educate their fellow citizens who were not educated in the country, so that they can change the face of the economy of the country and the country economic performances. This is what we are now embarking on, and if we can major on that as African communities, particularly in Zambia. In the midst of this, the president, in his struggle, has called for, you get 20% from NAPSA. You get 20% from NAPSA, and then you go and reinvest that to ease the lifestyles of the people. Many times we have liked to condemn, but before assessing a situation, which sometimes I call it, it's coming from the background of illiteracy to some degree. Like I said earlier, that Aristotle, Socrates, and Platonics abandoned democracy then because a lot of people were illiterate then in their country to embark on the program of promoting democracy to establish good governance sites. And here is the situation that, okay, here is our president that is struggling, UPND government, which I call a summary of all governments when we can see what is happening with UPND. UPND was ANC, it breeded up UPND, I mean UNIP, it then produced the MMD. They are the same people, if you can see the gentlemen, unless we produce another crop of leadership after this government. And what I see in the UPND government today is an effort to, to cream all the efforts that have been embarked on since the day of independence, which requires that all politicians in the country, especially those that were in the first regime, second, third, fourth, fifth, up sixth, they have to work with this government to develop the people. It's not just about politicians, it's about the communities, the general publics, the people. They're the ones that are looking for leaders, not just politicians who think of themselves winning elections tomorrow, returning the power to themselves tomorrow, or bouncing back to power tomorrow. People are looking for leaders. And if we have to come up with good leaders, it will only happen if today the government in office improves further on the tenets of democracy by making sure that the tenets of good governance are capitalized on. We need to emphasize that. And that can only be realized if the whole public, the whole general public, the opposition members of our of political parties, church leaders, call our traditional leaders, the general public works with the government of the day for the good of the country. But if we always be critical and very oppositive, we will retard, we will deter, we will hinder progress as a nation. Where the president puts up free education as a tool, as a policy of the government, we have to support that as teachers, also as families. You ask me for the family. I'm taking my children on bursaries to school. I'm teaching my children to access CDF funds. I'm teaching my family to start accessing. I was just educating my father on Sunday to go and access his NAPSA 20% relapse all package because he's a retired personnel. This is ideal. If I see my government failing today as an African, I have the right to knock at the doors of the authorities, engage them, seek an interface with them, provide solutions where I feel I can. I'm already doing a dossier in form of a thesis that is providing solutions in places where I'm seeing my government limping, and the doors are open to us. I've been to Zimbabwe, colleagues. I've been to many African countries that I would go and present my suggested solutions to situations that are tormenting their countries. And I've done that also in my country severally. Things I may not bring forth on this fora for the purpose of auth reasons, but for the sake of this program, I have to urge my fellow citizenry of this country. The fall of the government in office now is the fail of the Zambians. If you see a government failing, it's because people are not participating in how we formulate our laws. We shun away such things. When we see our governments thriving, trying to make the livelihoods of the people correct, then we would be, pressing on brakes from behind. When someone is riding a bike, then you're pressing brakes from behind. You're causing that person fail. And the failure of the other in life becomes the failure even of the causer of that fall. The issue that right now is hot is NAPSA issue that you are mentioning, gentlemen. It's a very good idea that if I get my 20%, I will invest that money with the little entrepreneurship skill that I have learned, and and whatever I would be realizing from what I would have invested is something that will add value to our economy. Someone says the current government has failed. May I beg to differ, because if they've failed, then all Zambians have failed. The first regime has failed, the second regime has failed, and everyone else. Amid these many problems that are faced by global economy today due to impacts of global warming impact, talk of COVID-19, a pandemic that is still wreaking havoc on the planet. It has changed the manner in which governments are making policies today. Least were government aware that there would be an outbreak of like COVID in 2019, which came at a time everyone least expected. And that called for an emergency. You know, I did a report to African Union SADC Legion when COVID-19 broke up in this country on the planet Earth, particularly in Africa. I'm sorry to mention this to you, gentlemen, that we had no coffers in the treasury of African Development Bank. We did not even have a coin to buy a mask. Those are things that we have to be addressing. The diabolic disease came at a time we least expected it, and it found us sleeping. To blame an individual or a political party not in office or in office doesn't play a game well. We have to unite and fight the vices that have held us backward, not only just as a government, but as communities as well, by making sure our pupils go to school, our chiefs are sat down. They have to value these norms, these etiquettes, teach them very well to their people in their legions. Also pastors, our colleagues of the bishoply collar, it is high time they begin to realize that in the Garden of Eden, God did not make just a puppeteer or a pew sitter in the church. The word man in Chinese means a worker. I find this interesting each time I'm researching. I learned that Adam was made to be a manager. No wonder he was given dominion, the power the politician is looking for, the power governments exercises. It is the dominion that God gave man. And then it is told in the Bible that God made a garden. A garden is a working place where he placed man. And then he dropped his presence thereon to make sure that this man works the levers that were there, the gold, the minerals that were below that soil. He works the animals, you know, their skins of animals that we can make belts, leather from. And that was the job of a man, which he started working before he was given a helper. And when it was lent his failing to work alone, they made him a suitable helper. Along the way, he made wrong decisions, which we are like now. We blame others when we see others make mistakes, but even ourselves, when we are blaming ourselves, we least get informed that even ourselves are making mistakes if we are approaching the corrective measures wrongly. If for lack of knowledge, for not having been taken to school, just like I said, she casualized their discussions with the snake and opened the Pandora of a human sense that survived with death and calamities. If we are making wrong policies, it's because we are lacking information. If we are criticizing the government wrongly, it's because we are lacking information, as Eve did, which we should avoid at all costs today. The pastors should start teaching these things passionately, just like we are speaking passionately right now, gentlemen. They have to start teaching people to be hardworking. The Bible says, let the lazy ones not eat. We have to eat to live, but to eat we must work, to reap, to earn through NAPSA, through pensions, through all kind of financing institutions that helps people by loaning them in a government that today is calling for, can we get wrong? Now, our duty as citizens is to participate every time when the government calls upon for, you know, reforms, law reforms, we have to participate. When we are calling people to go and vote, let them turn out in numbers. And when people are providing checks and balances, particularly opposition
Professor,
party members.
Professor.
Yes, please.
Sorry, I will have to cut you short because we have viewers out there that are following and would like to participate, and by so doing, they have sent in messages that would like to read out to you. Then you get to react. Jeremy, I'll request that you may take us through what has been sent to us.
All right, sure. So the first question comes from Laura, and she's asking, one thing that has struck me is that human rights aspect. How do we as Africans blend in the human rights of the West with our culture? So she's asking, how do we as Africans blend in the human rights of the West with our cultures? Then the other question also is coming in from Laura as well. She's saying there's a complaint about the process of accessing CDF being tedious and requiring a lot from the potential beneficiaries. What do you advise government should do to further ease the access of CDF? I think you can take those two questions for now.
Yeah, though I didn't get the first question so clearly, there was some little bit of blacking, but I guess she meant to say, okay, the first question, please. The second one, yes, please.
So the first one is saying, good evening, Professor. Thank you for defining what good governance is. One thing that has struck me is the human rights aspect. How do we as Africans blend in the human rights of the West with our cultures? I don't know if that is clear.
Oh, that is clear, yes. That's a very good question, my dear. Human rights, human rights are inherent privileges every human being on the planet Earth is believed to have been born with. It is something that cannot be derived of any human being that lives on the planet Earth. Those are things we call human rights. But legionary, these human rights, as declared universally, legionary, they are approached within the measures of the values, the interests, the norms, and the etiquettes of the people. Particularly, we are a young democracy in Zambia. I will have to refer to this country like Zambia. The human rights in the manner they are approached in like America, India, and what? These are countries that have been in place for too long. Since 1776, America became independent. Britain, way back 11th century, cannot compare itself with African countries, of which the first country to become independent, particularly in Africa, could have been in 1910. We just got independence in 1964. We are a young democracy. It is shocking to find someone believing our economy can be performing like the economy of United States of America, even in terms of human rights. We are still polishing ourselves to start behaving like an America at a full gear, as though we are the same power with an American culture. In our country, it is still a taboo. For example, it's still a taboo by majority from our chieftaindomships to believe that a man can marry a man or a woman can marry a woman. We have not reached at the level where we can make that as a norm, a common norm or a value for a man to marry a man. And by majoritarian vote, as we participate in the creation of our own laws, we haven't yet provided for that. Just that distinguishes us from the other kind of democracies. We are still young to do certain things. Actually, we are even still young to be taking drugs. Some of the drugs I hear, they are called these very powerful drugs like cocaine that are being pushed to us. We are still young to be doing such things. We are still holding on to the norms of our traditions that never believed in that. And that's what democracy allows us to do so. And that's the reason why even our constitution, particularly in the Republic of Zambia, allows the citizens to participate in the formulation of our laws processes, where the majoritarians vote for a proposed motion, then the majoritarians takes that law into establishment. That is what democracy is about. At the same time, the second question was like the CDF funds. The CDF funds are meant to develop our communities in rural areas. And these funds to be accessed, they must be accessed effectively and efficiently. And if they have to be accessed efficiently and efficiently and effectively, the people that sits on the panel to give the CDF funds must make sure they will be accountable. There will be transparency in the manner that they disburse these funds. And the people that are benefiting from these funds must be learned, educated, or must have the capacity to manage that money, those monies when they receive them. Here is a situation. One time I was talking 2013 on Pan-African Radio. If I have to empower someone to do something, I must be well informed that this person will be able to manage these funds correctly. Least he spoils it. If he has no knowledge of how to manage the coffers as such, he would be given. It is thus the duty of the giving authorities, the people that disperse these funds, to make sure that a cooperative that is approaching them to access those funds, an individual that is approaching the authorities to access those funds, have the knowledge of how to use those funds, and that those funds will be beneficial to people in the community this person is going to invest the funds. And that's not being legitimate, and that is not being a bad government. Let me borrow that word. If I'm making sure that these funds are put to the good use for the purpose they are corrected, it's called good governance. It should promote efficiency. But in a situation where the government is failing to give, even when it is mandated to give as guided by the policy at hand, that is very much regrettable development if it can be noticed. If anything, particularly in the bide of trying to promote good governance in our country, our current government is saying, let people access the authorities that gives these funds from DC's offices, district commissioners' offices, let them approach the local government offices, the council, and then use these funds correctly. And that will at least ease the economic hardships we're experiencing due to climate change impact, due to economic crunch that has affected the whole globe due to the war going on in Ukraine and Russia. It has affected everybody globally, including America itself. It's affected. If they are making it, it's because perhaps they're intelligent than us. In Rome, they're not complaining, it's because the economy never goes wrong. In Britain, they are complaining. In UK, they are complaining because of that war. We are not spared. What we have to do as a country, let's get the CDF funds, let's get the 20% issued advances against our NAPSA savings. I think also the pensions must extend that. The pensions must start doing that. The pay-as-you-earn must start doing that. Our colleagues in insurance sectors should start doing that. That the people, the general publics, the citizens can have something to be doing. Apart from that, we would urge people,
Prof,
those that are, yes, please.
Yes, sorry for cutting you short. we have some limited time, so we need to move to the next question. I wanted to find out, Prof, if we look at the global standards, you've mentioned some countries like Britain, you've mentioned America, you've mentioned Rome. Of course, they've set the standard or the bar high in terms of governance. If you look at Zambia today, are you hopeful, or are you saying we are on the right path with what we are doing? What is your take on that?
Yeah, that's very good. As Zambia, I've written a statute I'm proposing to present before the African Union Economic and Social Development Committee. My insight is that it's possible we can. If the African Development Bank policy today can be improved, I'm telling you, gentlemen, that we can be, as a state, particularly Zambia, be able to access reparations, be able to access inputs like compensations, indemnities, in situations where we run short of funds, to re-empower our economy, to recapitalize our economy. With this thrives, I've seen our government making its efforts, lobbying our debtors that they may suspend our debts for some time to allow us recapitalize our economy, that we can develop muscle enough to be able to generate enough income, both for the domestic purposes of use and the international purposes of use, offsetting our debts. These are thrives that should not be criticized. If anything, we are supposed to provide solutions where deserving in such circumstances. Government strides right now aims to reduce poverty levels in the communities of Zambian nationals, but they are not doing it without hurdles, without facing challenges, just like I mentioned a few. I sympathize our government. As a professor, I will not join the people that criticizes the government. I'll shock you, brethren.
Prof, are we on the right track in terms of governance?
We are thriving. We haven't hit the right. We haven't yet hit the right position that we want to get there, but we are thriving. My government right now is like a mother who has 10 children, but the economy is still a baby economy that cannot be able to feed the 10 children. You know, you'll be shocked to hear this, sir. Do you know that the death rate in our country has been completely managed by the introduction of ARVs and other medical facilities, and the creation of many hospitals that we've seen, and the employment of many doctors that is going on? It has reduced the death rate in comparison to the birth rates. This makes me believe we are not even 20 million as we think. We are so many. And if we have become so many, looking to the central government for everything becomes a problem. We are supposed to actually work with the government of the day. But if we can, by the majoritarian, be opposite to the development strides that the government is undertaking, then we can end up causing the government malfunction. This does not take the people in the government to sleep to avoid to be criticized, but the criticism must be the right one. For information, I'm suggesting of already a program that has been proven yet by the secretary to the cabinet office. We can be making fuel in this country. I'm taking advantage of this platform, which can cause a sale that fuel at 5 kwacha per liter. I've teamed up with engineers, people that are thinking big, are able to make an eco-village project in this country using biogases. We have a lot of natural resources in this country. We have so many bushes, we have so many trees. We have energy. My colleague in London, I hope he's watching wherever he is right now, on Facebook, wherever he told me he's working right now. I am planning right now to seek clearance from the public, public procurement authorities, a situation where I can make a plant here in Zambia, start manufacturing energy using solar boards, trap energy from the sun, which we are leaving just wasted when it's mostly needed in countries like London. I am already designing a formula of making. Yes, please.
Professor, I sincerely apologize. I will have to cut you short, but we do appreciate, your creativity and so on and so forth. But time is really not our best ally. And much of it we have, been cut out most often right here. This is why we could not exhaust, that which you had prepared for us. And I am of the view that we need to find, even some other time to talk about that which has been left out right here on our Ubuntu channel. Professor, I was expecting your reaction there. Jeremy, are you there? Are you getting me?
Yes, I am, Chaza. It was an eye-opener, this interview, in terms of governance issues. We've learned some of the key tenets of governance, what we should take home, that education is part of good governance, human rights is part of good governance, and all those tenets that has been listed by the professor. We need to bring him back, because it seems to have a lot for us that we can learn. You've heard that he has also an idea, Chaza, of how we can reduce the fuel cost up to 5 kwacha.
Exactly. Yeah, definitely. It will be a great time to have, ample time with him here. But due to time, as we can see, he has again been ejected by connectivity. It's been a challenge, but we hope we are definitely going to have, some other time with him. Those of you that have been following, we've been here on this special interview to talk about. Yes, Ruben?
No, Chaza, you're
okay, we've been here, to talk about good governance, and our guest tonight was, no other than Professor Martin Bell Chipakata, who was, enlightening us on good governance, and he's a scholar of, global good governance. And my co-host tonight has been Ruben Jeremy there, who's been so good tonight. And my name is Chaza. Thank you so much for following the program. And those of you that have been following through Facebook, YouTube, and so on and so forth, we greatly appreciate. For now, we are saying, God bless you all. We are out of here.